Well, welcome to this series called Hope-Filled Living in Turbulent Times. We're really glad you're here, and in this session we're going to be covering the topic of me managing me. And David and Terry, it's great to talk with you guys and visit, and it is obvious and a big understatement to say it has been quite the year. 2020 has been quite the turbulent time, as a lot of things have been happening in our lives personally, as well as collectively as a world, as a nation. Obviously, we're well aware of the pandemic that we're all experiencing, the stress that comes from that, as well as, of course, racial tensions and people losing jobs and financial challenges and all these things, as well as we all are experiencing that personally, right? It can't just be global, it can't just be corporate, that there's actually a sense of this is impacting my own personal heart and life as well. And I know I can say for myself in this time and in this season, I'm experiencing a lot of stress, not immune to it for sure. As you all well know, I'm in school right now, full-time master's degree, cranking away on that. I feel like I work, go home, do school, go to bed.
You have roommates?
I have roommates. We're always trying to go do stuff, always trying to get attention. And always got responsibilities. As you all know, there's a thing or two going on around here. And, leadership opportunities in different organizations outside of those two things as well. And there's a lot going on. And it kind of feels like you're constantly trying to catch your breath and to do things well. Right? Yeah. And it's difficult, and it weighs on you trying to manage it all. And I know you guys are human as well, and you're experiencing all the stress of life as well. So maybe share with us a little bit too of some of the things going on in y'all's personal lives right now. What's the stress you guys are experiencing?
Sure, but Matt, you wouldn't know this, but probably 2 or 3 decades ago, we actually characterized our world as seeming to tumble from crisis to crisis. So we're kind of in our current centers of tumbling, but it could have been financial crisis, natural disasters, threats of war, all kinds of things. So I think there's a commonality of dealing with turbulent times, regardless of when we live. And so, since you've vulnerably talked about, stress for maybe roommates and you want to go do things and there's nothing to do. I'll probably add a little color or a little perspective on this thing about, we have a lot of couples, for example, who are married, who are spending an inordinate amount of time together. That can be a challenge. My oldest daughter, Terry, is here, and so she knows her mother. And so she knows her mother and me. And so, that's a stress, just the stress of closeness of relationships that maybe we had some opportunities to escape in the past, and we're not able to escape. And you're having some challenges, I think, even with kids. Is that right?
Yes, I was thinking about, what makes for a turbulent time in our household, and that is, I'm joining the millions of parents around the world who are dealing with the schooling at home stress. And, some days I feel pretty confident about that, like everybody's learning, everybody's thriving, emotional and mental health is on target. But then there are other days when I think no one's learning anything and we are just off the tracks. And the best thing we can hope for is we were counted present in school that day. I mean, that's literally some days the way I think, score, that's it.
Yeah, that's right.
But I know that that's a common theme for our day. It's one of the stresses and turbulent times that we're living in.
Yeah. So we have singles that are stressed, married couples that are stressed, parents that are stressed,
we're all in there.
Employees that are stressed. We work together, so
Yes.
a lot of turbulent stuff going on.
Lot indeed, yeah. It just shows that we're all human and we all kind of have to navigate this and figure this out. And so we'd love for you to take a minute, whether you're watching this online in a live format, you can chat that, or maybe you're just sitting around watching this with some friends, some family members, co-workers. Hit pause. Feel free to take a second to talk about this. Get in touch with what's going on inside of you. What are you feeling? You could take this as a feelings check, where you just get in touch with what's the stress that you're carrying around? What are the things that are going on in your life? And share that with one another for a minute. David and Terry, in this session, we're focusing on the idea of me managing me. As we just talked about, we got a lot of stress going on in our lives. It's interesting how when we're experiencing stress, we tend to do these things like try to control other people or situations. We try to manipulate things or just fix things. When we're experiencing stress, we just want to grab it and fix it almost. And I think, Terry, you have a particular funny story or anecdote to maybe that very point for us.
Yeah, Matt, there was a point of stress when I was, in my preteens and teenage years, and it was in the 60s and 70s when I was a teenager, and the turbulence was different, but very real. In those days, there was a source of stress, and families across our country were just sure that there was this existential stress and a threat to our morals and our values, and we're just certain that it was going to be a huge problem. And it was this thing called rock and roll. Yeah, I know. And rock and roll was going to threaten the safety of the American family. And there were two particular rock and rollers, singing groups, who were a particular source of threat, and it was the Beatles and Elvis Presley. So think about me, preteen, teenage years. Well, who do you think are my favorite bands during the 60s and 70s? Elvis Presley and the Beatles, right? And so I would spend hours laying in front of my, record player, and laying in front of my record player or the radio, listening to the rock and roll of the Beatles and Elvis Presley. Well, because they were a threat to our family, my dad, out of a really good heart, was going to rid our family of this evil threat. And so one night, after I had been out of the house, he found my records and proceeded to rid the house of all of the evil source of rock and roll by breaking the Beatles and Elvis Presley records. Okay, out of a good heart, but rock and roll was gone from the Ferguson household, and so that was one of those moments where the stress and the turbulence was different than it is today. But it was very real. And it was one of those examples of maybe not so much of the me managing me moment and trying to control, like you mentioned there. So, Dad, you want to
Sure.
fess up down?
Now, Matt, your problem is when she says records, you have no frame of
Yeah, I'm
reference.
like, what are we talking about?
Round
vinyl
things,
thing,
like
the
that.
hole in the middle, round. Yeah. So this was not a good story because that's one of the things that can happen during times of stress is that we try to control things. All right. Beyond ourselves. And in this particular case, while she is, again, I think she actually might have been on that Sunday, might have been even at church. And so her father, this is my firstborn. We have to protect the household, right? I have 3 of them. She's the oldest one. If we lose her,
We're losing ground.
The dominoes are going to fall, right? And so, so I found these evil records,
Right.
And Matt, the worst of it is, because my wife, I actually found another record from some guy named Montavani. All right, now that just sounded evil too. I didn't know it was actually an instrumental record. It didn't even have words on it, but it just kind of sounded evil too.
It sounded bad.
That's why I just broke them all, And it's the only record my wife ever had, and so I created some real problems in my household of me not managing me, and that's one of the critical issues in these kind of times. From a psychology point of view, it's called locus of control. What that means is control what you can control and kind of don't sweat the other stuff. Impact what you can impact and then kind of back away. And I wasn't doing a good job of that. I've come to realize now, again, from kind of a cognitive behavioral point of view, it's this idea of me saying, well, they made me mad, so I cussed them out, is irrational, okay? They may have done something dumb, whether it's our kids or some silly driver, but me getting so angry that I am retaliating, that's me losing a sense of control of me. So this idea of me managing me is really important. See, I can serve other people, I can care for other people, I can actually maybe have some boundaries in my relationship with other people, but ultimately, I just can't control my wife. I can't control people's driving. I can't control pandemics. And I think it's true, Terry. It's hard to control your kids even. That's a challenge.
It is. And grandkids, as it turns out, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, that's something that us as parents, we're going to have to really assess and do a little bit of a quick assessment on ourselves about, are we trying to control all kinds of things? Because you're right, Dad. You can teach, you can train, you can discipline, you can set boundaries, you can implement consequences for behavior that's not appropriate. But ultimately, we can't control our kids. And some of us parents have to learn that the hard way. And you learn that the hard way by just all kinds of battles that really don't need to be fought.
Like over records.
Like over records. Yeah. For instance, in my house, I've had to learn the hard way of, you can't control what a kid's preferences are about their clothing or about their style. My daughter, man, that hot pink skirt that looked like a tutu was eventually worn in a whole lot more occasions than I care to admit. Our oldest son actually had a mohawk at one point, and that was not a fashion choice I was on board with, really. But that was one of those moments where I had to finally realize, in order to have peace in our home, I had to give up some of the locus of control and actually manage me. And those are just some really difficult battles, and you eventually learn that in order to have that peaceful home, I'm going to have to let some things go. Battle's not worth. Things are just not worth the battle at times, and not worth the fight. And
I'm reminded when your little brother was growing up, Eric. There was this big battle between your mom and Eric over, he had to tuck in his shirt tail. Right? You could just not get out of your house with your shirt tail out. And I can remember so many mornings, Matt. I mean, there's battle over, we're tucking that thing in. It might have lasted 5 seconds for him to get out the door, and then it was out. It's like, come on, give me a break.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we've done is, those of us that are parents or even grandparents, this would be helpful. We actually have something called a parent check-in, and for those of you that want to do a quick assessment of how you're doing at your role as a parent and how your well-being is being impacted or not, we have something called a parent check-in. Real quick, you'll find the instructions on your screen, and take a moment and download that assessment, do a little quick check-in, and see how this locus of control and me managing me thing is going for you.
Well, David, you've noted for our team here in particular that it seems like these times that we're living in right now seem to be a little bit different than how we've experienced times in the past. And I thought maybe you could just unpack for us a little bit of what you're seeing and what you're sensing and what that looks like today.
Yeah, sure. We gave a quick look past of, tumbling from crisis to crisis, where it's financial crisis that might be in our country, might be in Asia, whatever. Well, in the current time of this pandemic, we've got something that's global. That's very unusual. It's affected all age groups, which is very, very different. We're not just, we started out thinking, well, we're only talking about the elderly, but now we're talking about from an economic point of view and kind of restrictions point of view, it's of all ages. And then probably the most impactful when it comes to stress is that it's impacted all of our dimensions of what's called human flourishing. A lot of research on what we call well-being, sometimes it's called happiness. But if we think about just our flourishing, that has to do with, are we really flourishing, in our health, wellness, in our relationships, in our vocation. Our vocations have been totally disrupted in many, many ways with the loss of jobs and all those kind of things. Flourishing has to do with financial flourishing. Well, the whole financial thing is all, kind of disrupted. And then even the dimensions of what's called flourishing in faith, which is another recognized part of human well-being. Even that's been disrupted when we end up questioning like, why us, why now, why me, all those kind of things. So I think it is very unique. And I think that's why it's really important for us to kind of work on some ways we can kind of mitigate the impact of this stress. And so I think it'd be good for us to talk through some of those. The first one that you and Terry have heard that I've kind of championed with our team is, we want to listen to our health professionals about crowd size and hand washing and covering coughs and all that. And we've made an emphasis around here of let's listen to health professionals, not politicians, not news commentators, not blog posts, Let's listen to the experts on this. That makes sense because we really do accentuate our stress when we start comparing this commentator with this commentator, this politician with this politician. It just accentuates your stress and you haven't accomplished anything. So that's one way, and I know each of you have got some ideas about how to mitigate the impact of the stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the one I was thinking about was just how critical it is for us to be mindful of limiting, controlling, moderating the amount of content we're consuming of the news, of media. Yep. And we can just call it what it is, me being a millennial and maybe representing the younger generation, and even, let's be real, Gen Z is very different even than millennial. They're what's called digital natives, whereas a lot of my generation, we kind of adopted it in that college age. But Terry, not to throw you under the bus here, but this morning when we were dealing with your car keys and things like that, I saw this commercial yesterday for a car that's coming out that is now able to use your phone to be the key for the car. So you can push start button your car just by having your phone nearby, whether you have your keys or not.
This can help me.
Yeah.
Although I lose my phone sometimes too, so I don't know if that would really help me, but I like where we're going.
Now, he didn't use the word "you lost your keys," so you just threw your own self under the bus.
I did. It's true.
Well, this may, ruin my point here, but I was bringing that up to say, like an example like that, a car company is catching on to. We are never without our phones.
Yeah,
they are building a world now where that's your most prized possession that goes with you everywhere. And especially for those of us who consume content and things like news on social media, that's actually a really big way that I consume content. I stay up on things. You got to be mindful of what you're taking in because there's really nobody looking out for your health and your wellness in that. They're just trying to get content out. And I can listen to this commentator, I can listen to this news source, I can listen to this one, and it's building and generating algorithms and all these things to try to learn me, and it just wants to keep feeding me that stuff. And it's just that mindset of, am I being intentional? Am I being thoughtful about what I'm consuming? Or do I just passively continue to take on and grab on things and then kind of just become reactionary?
Right.
I just see stuff and react all the time.
Yeah.
I've got to be mindful of how much we're taking in and what we're taking in.
Yeah. And I think it's true, Matt, as you're kind of alluding to, is that all this stuff we can end up taking in, it's not giving us a unified position on anything, right? So that's the additional layer of stress, that the more I'm taking all this stuff in, it's competing with what someone else just said. You know, there's another way we can kind of practically mitigate the impact of stress in these turbulent times, and that is actually just reducing the amount of talk about it. You know, we've had some conversations here at our team about just kind of incessant comments about, you know, how long did you wait in line at the store for toilet paper? You know, how long did you wait? You know, or tracking, you know, how many cases are in your zip code? How many traces are in my zip code? And so you just eliminate a whole lot of that over talking about these things. Obviously, we need some caring communication, but we're going to end up arguing. It's much better to talk about the relationship communications rather than it is about things you cannot control. So part of me managing me is to actually maybe talk less during some of this time and maybe care more. So that's another practical thing. And Tara, I think you have one that maybe can help some families out there too.
Sure. You know, you guys talked about there's some things we need to limit and things we need to reduce and things we need to decrease. Well, there's also some things we need to increase if we want a more hope-filled life and family and individual lives. And that is, we found a lot of benefit in three things. Number one is be intentional about making yourself laugh. Like whatever, whatever you find really tickles your funny bone, do more of it. Whether it's watching America's Funniest Videos or cute baby videos or whatever makes you laugh, do it. We found a lot of just health benefits, and there's a lot of brain research that says your mood and your overall outlook improve when you are intentionally laughing. And so my husband and I will actually go sit down on the back porch and watch a particular comedy channel called Dry Bar Comedy, and it has 30, 45-minute individual sets of comedians, and we will intentionally go out with the purpose of we need to laugh. So we'll increase that.
Your mom and I are binge watching Andy. Remember?
Oh yeah, Andy Griffith.
Andy
That's
Griffith, yes.
Nice.
So we've been
That's right.
binge watching and
Yeah.
laughing at Barney.
I know. I mean,
I
like
do know that one.
Yeah, it does. It just helps you when you are intentionally making yourself laugh.
Yeah, good.
All right. The other thing is, especially for families and young kids, it's important to, if you want more hope and more peace in your family, is to be intentional about the fun you cultivate. Have some fun, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. It could be just doing the same things you always do in a new way. We've done before where you watch a movie a lot of times with kids, but you watch it in a blanket fort that you built rather than just on the couch. Or if it's Taco Tuesday, you make the same tacos and they have the same dinner. But we've done this where you have everybody in your family come around for Taco Tuesday, and everyone speaks in a different accent or channels a different character that day, and you have your dinner conversation, and it just it's a catalyst for fun, and it helps just bring more hope and less stress.
Well, that's even like Terry, a team meeting we had about a month ago or so.
We did.
You led a team meeting where we all had to give our updates in a different accent.
I know. It was one of the most fun team meetings we've ever had.
It was.
I know. We did do that.
We
again.
laughed a lot. It was great.
We did. All right. The other thing is that we want to increase is be intentional about plans that we're looking forward to. And the reason is we're not wired to have a brain that is fearful and hopeful at the same time. We only have so much brain capacity and so much thinking capacity. And so we want to focus on the positive and focus on the future plans, and that will help reduce the anxiety and fear we all experience. So one of the things we recommend is that everyone think about the next thing you're looking forward to. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It could be just dinner with some friends in a new restaurant. It could be camping or hiking with your sweetheart. It could be planning the next vegetable in your vegetable garden. It could be trying out a new recipe that you got from Amazon in the cookbook. It's simple, but it's the next thing you're looking forward to. So, Matt, what's something you're looking forward to?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great idea. I would say, just thinking off the top, would be I get to see my dad today and tomorrow. He's coming in town. Yeah. And so it'll be fun to get to connect with him and catch up and hear how he's doing. He and my mom are planning some fun things back in Houston and stuff, so it's always fun to kind of get caught up on how those things are going. So I'm looking forward to seeing him soon.
Fantastic. Dad, how about you? What are you looking forward to the
Yeah,
next
you
few
know,
days?
one of my looking forward tos was recently fulfilled, as I had been looking forward to going out to dinner with your mom. Now that we're loosening up a little bit, to actually a restaurant where you sit down and they actually wait on you and take your order and bring it to you. No more takeout, no more stand in line, no more
Right.
bring it to the car.
Right.
So I'm always looking forward to those, and I'm looking forward to a few more of our nice restaurants opening up to accomplish that same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so those simple things of things you're looking forward to are how you replace anxiety with hope-filled anticipation. So just a practical strategy.
It's good.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And I like too how a lot of those things incorporate other people being involved, right? There's a sense of community, there's a sense of supporting one another in that. And I think there's also a degree and an element of this that's for ourselves, right? This topic of me managing me. And so we also want to be practical about what are some of those kind of smaller things that I can be doing for myself. And David, I think you said you had a few of those that
Sure.
you might want to share with us about how do we prioritize managing me and my own stress.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We're going to talk a little bit about the impact on our nervous system from stress in these turbulent times. And a part of how we help with that is we manage our sleep. We need to actually be very consistent about getting sleep during stress-filled times. Second one is kind of managing your diet and a number of things, avoiding caffeine if possible. Your mom and I have cut back to decaf coffee. It's been painful.
Yeah, I don't get that.
I don't know if you've cut back on your diet, your diet drinks or
Okay.
not, but
Still metal.
you know, salt intake, a lot of those kind of practical things. You know, even the world of increasing exercise. Exercise is a great stress reliever. So believe it or not, you know, not only am I doing my treadmill time and my working out at the gym and a few things, but actually gone walking with my wife on several occasions on the weekends. So anything we can do in the practical way. And one very interesting way that we're going to talk about as we close, and then you kind of wrap up for us, Matt, is actually how we breathe. And the key thing is stress, it actually kicks in our nervous system. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. That's actually our fight or flight. So anytime we experience anxiety or fear, it's like just saw a snake, I'm running, okay? Car coming toward me in my lane, I'm reacting. And so that sympathetic nervous system actually kicks in with stress and fear. And what happens then is heart races, blood pressure goes up. You actually are experiencing stress all through your body. And one of the things that these turbulent times can do is kind of keep our body in this fight or flight stage constantly. And that's not helpful. It actually reduces our immune system, makes us more vulnerable to all kinds of health issues. So a very practical thing we can do, actually I began to practice this, the last 6 or 8 months because of your brother's training in his physical therapy world, called box breathing. What box breathing does is it actually calms your brain, moves you're into the other part of your brain where your parasympathetic nervous system is. That's actually where your brain calms you. So it actually calms you, brings you out of this fight or flight. Box breathing is what is practiced by Navy SEALs as they learn how to stay underwater for minutes at a time. And we're not suggesting that, Matt.
Okay.
But we're going to practice box breathing just a minute on you, and we'll invite our audience to join us here.
All right.
Because actually what we're going to do, and I've been actually doing this at the top of every hour for the last 6 or 8 months. And I simply take about 4 or 5 minutes to actually box breathe. And what that is as we practice it, this, Matt, what we're going to do, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Switching nervous
There's going
systems
to be a
over here.
lot of count of 4. So where you're going to exhale for a count of 4. Just let your breath out and then hold it out for a count of 4. Now breathe in for a count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4. And now exhale for a count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4. Now, inhale again. Count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4. All right, Matt's calm now, I'm saying, all right? Now, if you do that for 3 or 4 minutes, it will calm you. You're in the other side of your brain, and now we're actually, blood pressure, okay, has lowered. Heart rhythm has lowered, all right? And you're actually out of that fight or flight part of your brain.
Perfect. I feel relaxed. I
Okay.
feel calm.
Now, you probably need 3 or 4 minutes of that. We had a couple of rounds about the box. So anyway, you'll find a video about that. It'll kind of illustrate it for you. So that's a real practical thing. So watching our sleep, watching our caffeine and other diet drink intake, a little exercise, isometric exercise. I've just learned what that is from your brother. It's actually really good. And where I go for my workouts, they actually have something else that I do not do, Matt, called Pilates. Okay, but apparently that's actually good for you during these stress-filled times. And I'll leave that one to you or somebody.
I may defer to Terry there.
Okay.
That'll
All right,
make you
so
do
wrap
best
this
around.
up for us, Matt.
Perfect. Well, thanks, David, for that helpful, and Terry for those stories too. Really, really good. And just as a recap for us here, even thinking about moving forward, some next steps, just reminders here. We want to be able to mitigate stressors that we can control. And we can control things like sleep. We can control things like our diet, like caffeine. I'm not sure I believe in the caffeine thing yet, but I'll trust you.
Me too.
I'll trust you on that one. We can do things like box breathing. We can do things like taking control of these moments. And what I love about that example that you gave too, about doing it at the top of every hour, was it wasn't your whole day. It wasn't something dramatic that required this
Right.
turn everything off. It's just I'm going to be intentional about making these little small choices. We want to do things like, again, focusing on what we can control. And things that we can control are how much news, how much content, how many things we keep taking in, whose voices we're taking in, being mindful of that, being active consumers rather than passive consumers of the things going on around our world, as well as, like Terry mentioned, the parent check-in. We would love for you guys to take that, use that, find that helpful, just again for gauging where you're at, how you're doing with those things. And so we're grateful that you all have joined us for this session on me managing me, and hopeful that this is helpful for you to take some practical steps towards managing that.
That's right. Aren't you excited you have a dad that's better managing him these days?
I am. The rest of the story is much better.